Hello and welcome, I'm Olas Gerjuk and you're watching Head to Head with UATV. President of Belarus Alexander Lukashenko has accepted the invitation of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to attend the second Forum of Regions, which will be held in Zhytomyr this fall. The event promises to be one of the most important ones in the bilateral relations between the two countries. To talk more about the current political agenda between Ukraine and Belarus, we are joined in the studio today by Andrey Dmitriev, co-chairman of democratic movement Tell the Truth in Belarus. Hello and thank you for joining us. You see, it rhymes even, Tell the Truth in Belarus. It is good to have you in this studio. So let's start with the forum itself. So this is the second occasion when Ukraine and Belarus use the same united platform to establish and to develop, well, not to establish, this already established, but to develop the relations between the two countries. Could you please tell us why this event and this invitation from the Volodymyr Zelensky was important?
I think that's important because it shows that two countries are going on to build friendship and relations that are based on quite honest and open relations between us. But at the same time, I think that is important because, you know, those are forums mostly for officials. So they will meet each other and our officials would have a great chance to look on Ukraine situation, you know, not from the perspective of Russian propaganda, but from their colleagues, directly what their colleagues will say. But at the same time, I must say that that is a chance for us, as for democratic forces, for civil society, to raise some issues. I understand that it's mostly about economy, but we are saying today that all European leaders, for example, they have such a tradition when they meet with president or when they meet with ministers to ministers, they always, a part of it, meet with representatives of democratic forces. I think that this important tradition shows that yes, we have relations with the state, but at the same time we support democracy. And I think here in Ukraine you understand how that's important to get such support. Mm-hmm. So I would love to see
democratic forces in Belarus is opposition.
Yes, definitely is in position. I would say it's even out of system because we have just two independent members of parliament in our country. And
out of how many? Out of how many?
Out of 110. And there are two for last 16 years, you know. So I mean that, of course, we are so different with Ukraine, you know, where you have 6 presidents. When you change in the parliament, you have 2 Maidans. For last 25 years, we have 1 president, and actually it's almost the same parliament. I'm not saying by faces, but basically the ideology, you know.
Yes, basically Lukashenko reigns Belarus and doesn't want to give up.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, agree. But nevertheless, I think this as well would be nice if, for example, to this forum in Zhytomyr would be accepted participation not only of state officials from Belarus, but as well of representatives of civil society. So that could show the support to civil society, you know. And
well, yes, the civil society in Ukraine is pretty active, especially since 2014, when this reform agenda has gained momentum, and basically everything that we have, we owe to the civil society right now, the cooperation between the civil society and the government, because civil society serves as a great push and a kick to the government. Indeed, it will be very interesting to see this dialogue evolving between Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko and new Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. After a similar Forum of Regions has just been recently held in St. Petersburg, Russia. So that was about the bilateral relations between Russia and Belarus. Of course, Belarus knows that the relations between Ukraine and Russia aggravate probably on a daily basis, mm-hmm. right? And the side that Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has been trying to take was always kind of blurry, if I may say so. How would you describe and tell us about this dialogue that happened in St. Petersburg and about this union stage, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. This is the result of the dialogue with Mr. Putin. And how do you see the relations between Ukraine and Belarus evolving in the next 10 years, let's say?
I think First, Belarus and Ukraine needs to think about kind of a new agreement that will be will consist of new spheres of cooperation. We definitely today have some economic wars that shouldn't take place, but this is because of too much regulation, and too less agreements. We need more agreements between our countries, involving people, involving business. I think that's the best base to keep us as friends. But at the same time, definitely Belarus will build its relations with Russia, and for us to have a good relations with Russia is strongly important because of security and because of economy. So coming back to Union State, that each year we have this old tradition, our presidents of two countries meet each other and saying some words that now we agreed about everything, upon everything, and we will build our union further and further and further, and it still take place in 1995 because it's all comes from the post-Soviet Union, let's say, reaction, yes. And now we definitely need to have some revising of relations with Russia. We need new kind of understanding ourselves as an independent country, and of course we will build good relations with Russia anyhow. But still, it shouldn't be just continuing talking and talking and talking about, oh, let's come back this or this way to USSR. No one in Belarus wants to come back to USSR.
Well, this is a great comment. Does Russia determine Belarus as an independent country?
I think so. Of course, there are different circles in Russia, so there are some revanchist circles who
But at least, what narrative do you hear from the Russian media? Because, yes, I do know that in Belarus you have a lot of Russian TV channels being broadcasted, so what kind of message do you hear from Moscow?
I think the main message from Moscow that we have two states and one nation. Yes?
Okay, one nation under God.
Yes, but
indivisible.
But what is interesting today, but I must say here
like
that it's not really relevant, not only from eyes of citizens who are really understand that they're separate nation and a separate state, just we have very close relation, but as well it's not relevant in eyes of Lukashenko and a state, because they don't want to be one nation, and I would say that Lukashenko dramatically shifting his position from being the main pro-union guy to being today one of the main pro-independence guy. And that's happened right after 2014, of course, when we understood that it's not just words, it's more.
Yes, probably he sees some kind of a threat from the Russian side, because he knows that if there is no friendship with Russia, then there is a huge threat, and then there is violence, and then war, and then some parts of the country being occupied, and etc. So let's continue discussing the Ukraine-Belarus relations. This month, President Volodymyr Zelensky called on Putin to meet him in Minsk, and he wanted to organize this meeting together with the United States President Donald Trump, British Prime Minister, well, probably not the resume, but the next one, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and French President Emmanuel Macron. Why do you think he chose Minsk for this meeting?
I think that because the Minsk is already accepted platform. You don't need to look for any other. And already Angela Merkel, for example, and the previous president of France, Mr. Hollande, they used to be in Minsk. So I think as well, Minsk, it's a platform where Russia is ready to talk. It's a very important issue, yes. But anyway, I must say that in Belarus we definitely are welcome to both Ukrainians and Russians, and more because we are definitely standing for peaceful process in Ukraine, and because we want this conflict finished, and finished with less
losses and casualties.
Yes, and losses and casualties.
We want that too. We want them too.
And victims, because for us, when Mr. Zelensky had his presidential rally, he said that, oh, maybe we need to close Minsk agreements. And it was quite worrying for us, because, for us it's just about, not just about wording, it's about people who are saving, because of those agreements. And we really like that he didn't do so. He can continue, he understands its importance. But I must say that it is very important not just for Belarus, because by this, we state ourselves as an independent state, independent from Russia as well. that we
So this
have
is an independent platform to hold a discussion
yes,
at.
and I think it's important, and by this we enforce our independence, definitely.
Well, the thing about Minsk format is that it has proven its ineffectiveness here in Ukraine. So people are disappointed about the format, but it is good that the new power and the new president want to reboot it somehow, restart by inviting maybe, well, German Chancellor, French President. Also, they want to invite two more parties, the signatories of Budapest Memorandum, Great Britain and the United States. And if that table, that round table, will be located in Minsk, then probably that will be a reboot of the Minsk talks.
We hope so.
Yes, that is very interesting. And I do know that Alexander Lukashenko has been trying to somehow mediate the conversation, maybe, well, or the conversation which is absent between the leaders of Ukraine and Russia. That was absent until this July, because we know that there was this first phone conversation between Zelensky and Putin. But do you see Lukashenko as a progressive mediator in terms of Ukraine-Russia relations and possible resolution of the war in eastern Ukraine?
I don't think Lukashenko himself and Belarus as a country will see us as mediators, to be honest, because even more we are trying to step back from it. We are trying even to be just a platform, because to be mediator means
to get involved.
To get involved,
and
yes.
This is dangerous.
Yes, in Belarus, our position today, we are not involved in the conflicts, and we want this conflict has been finished. So our contribution to this peacemaking process is to talk to Russians, that they has to talk to Ukrainians, that they has to talk to Russians, and provide the platforms for this. In that respect, I would say for us it's crucially important the dialogue, even such a dialogue as we have today between Russia and Ukraine will continue. Because let's be honest, absence of dialogue is always going us to the more victims of conflict.
Yes, thank you so much for this comment. This is indeed very important. Could you please share with us maybe what a kind of mood is being spread among the Belarusian people? Because we do know that, well, Putin is a dictator, but Lukashenko, as you said, is also reigning the country for 25 years. So basically the country is lagging behind in terms of democracy and transparency. And I would suppose, I would assume that probably the citizens wouldn't be so much pleased about this, yes? That they cannot change the power, that basically the same people run the country, and this is like the ownership of the people, yes?
Definitely, major Belarusians want change. Major Belarusians want new president, new government, new faces. And I would say that Ukraine elections, and they see it in Ukraine, they would love to have such a political situation. But there is one very important moment that came to our politics actually because of Ukraine as well in 2014. Belarusian wants to see it peacefully. They don't want to pay by its territory, by our people, for this. And that makes us different, and our past different from Ukrainian past to democracy. But the overall mood, I would say, of Belarusians today, yes, we need change, because without the peaceful change, there is no possibility to build a future, a fairness future for our kids. Otherwise, our kids has to go outside, of the country to find a job, as well as our men's, and I think nobody is happy about it today. And as well, I feel it in society, that society is developed more than authority. Society is already living in 21st century. Authority is trying to keep it in 20th century.
But are these authorities willing to hear the society? I mean, how much of prospects would you see for this change to happen within the next years?
It's little better now because of, for example, forces like Tell the Truth that I am leading, because we're building dialogue. We are keen to build a dialogue in Belarus.
Yeah, because you oppose the current regime.
And we oppose, but we oppose it not in confrontation. We're saying we have to talk. We need to talk, because we see what happened in Ukraine when people don't talk to each other. We need to talk to each other, even if we disagree on many aspects. But I think more and more government is trying to listen to people, but they can't. because in order to listen to people, you need to have democracy. You need to have elections. There is no other cases and tools how you can talk to people directly and let him choose their future, except let him vote for those whom they think they're gonna vote and form the government. So I think definitely Belarus today in the process of transition of power, it's a different speed, I would say, and maybe a little bit different, and not little bit different from Ukraine, but it's definitely on its path.
It's definitely coming.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully this changes, even if they're slow, they will be steady. Thank you so much for your comments, and thank you for being a guest today in our studio.
Thank you.
That was Andrey Dmitriev, co-chairman of Democratic Movement Tell the Truth in Belarus. Thank you for watching Head to Head. I'm Oles Karajuk. Goodbye.